All right, so welcome to the Blue Swan. Today we are very, very lucky to have Academy Award winner Scott Leva. And this is in his office. He was gracious enough to do this. And so I want to start this podcast a little bit differently today. Back when I was about 2 months into a talent agency, Scott was the guy who met with me, who grabbed coffee, which gave me the faith to do this thing and also more faith in my ability to chase visual computing at Stanford and everything else. And so on that note, I'll pass it off to you.
Just gonna say welcome. So, um, do you have questions, or how do you want to deal with this?
Um, all right, so every superhero has their origins,
Hmm.
right? And so yours started way back in the day with gymnastics, and it was Lin's Kung Fu.
Hmm.
Did you want to talk a little bit about how that led to everything? And
I mean, a lot of it was growing up. We moved a lot. My father was in the military, so I was always a new kid. And I found that I started to work things out physically. Gymnastics became I really got more into Kung Fu first. And then gymnastics I thought would be a cool addition to the martial arts, and both kind of segued into each other. Um, I always had moving around a lot. I always had kind of a relationship with the character Spider-Man when I was a kid. The first comic book I ever read was Amazing Spider-Man 39, and I related to Peter Parker like most people did. That's what made Peter Parker so popular was everybody kind of had some sort of connection that they could deal with being the new kid, being the bookworm, being the outcast at school, and that was kind of me. So then I got really strong with martial arts, and gymnastics followed. Um, and that was kind of my origin story. And as it kind of segued on, I got interested in acting and did a lot of the school plays. And at a certain point, I decided to move to New York to be an actor. And while there, I worked at a gymnastics gym on Sutton Place called Sutton's Gym, met a lot of stunt people, and they came up with the notion, wow, you should probably be a stunt man. And sort of going a long way around telling the story, that's how I sort of segued into stunts, and kind of there you have it.
thanks. And so long before Letters of Iwo Jima with Clint Eastwood and the Oscars, there was Knott's Berry Farm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
was that and so how can you talk about sort of how each role progressively led to the next and built up um, to the stunt airbag invention and how it all pieced together?
Um, Knott's Berry Farm became a job. I ended up, when I came from New York, I was living in New York, working in New York a lot originally. And then I had a girlfriend at the time. She had family in California. We decided to do that Go West Young Man. I had worked with a very famous stunt coordinator by the name of Dar Robinson. Dar gave me that Go West Young Man speech. And I moved out to LA. Um, and I pursued stunts, but even with my stunt background and work history in New York, I was the new kid coming in. It was very hard for me to find work. And there was a time in the morning I was woken up by the radio that said world famous stuntman Dar Robinson was killed today. And it just completely shocked me because I thought, well, Dar is invulnerable. How the hell did that happen? And it made me rethink everything. And so I decided to kind of push away from stunts because that kind of really hit me hard. And then I did a local audition for Knott's Berry Farm, of all things, a stunt show, which I thought was more acting than anything else. And a lot of the big stunt guys in the community had worked at Knott's Berry Farm. People like Mick Rogers, who doubled um, Mel Gibson, Carl Cefalio, who just recently passed. He's been um, a big kind of legendary icon in our industry forever. But a lot of stunt guys that I worked with down the road had worked at Knott's Berry Farm. So there was nothing wrong with it. Everybody kind of liked it and thought, oh, this is really cool. But it was an in-between job. And there just came a time, girlfriend and I broke up. I moved from Orange County to the LA area and was pursuing acting, and a lot of jobs opened up that ended up going back to stunts, and one thing led to another, and I was making a better living as a stuntman than as an actor. Um, the biggest thing was I did have an agent. I did a lot of commercials. Canon Films had purchased the rights to Spider-Man the movie um, from Roger Corman. Corman originally had it. It wasn't going anywhere, so Canon got it, and I pushed really hard to get into it. So I was pushing really hard for acting, and I was kind of the front runner for it. And but I put all the stunt work aside and was dealing really with trying to get the Spider-Man movie. Came close, but Canon decided they were going to spend all their money on Superman 4 and Masters of the Universe, and inadvertently went bankrupt, and the movie kind of got pushed aside. And I realized I had to kind of make a decision about how I was going to make a living. And since stunts were always sort of my bread and butter, I started pushing more into the stunts, and the acting slowly faded away. I'm not sure that kind of tells you, but
I mean, it's a little bit. And so, you mentioned the another one of your friends had an untimely passing, and then that led to the testing of a lot of the airbags and the engineering.
well, before I got into equipment, most stunt guys, and myself included, always think that, air rams, ratchets, airbags, they are what they are. There were a lot of injuries and deaths that were brought on by people hitting the airbag off center. They'd hit it on the corner, they'd hit it off to the end, and the bag would either pop them out or completely roll in. We had a lot of injuries and quite a few deaths regarding airbag incidents. And I had a really good friend who had a company, and he had airbags, and he was always bringing the airbag out, in most cases doing. He was a really good fall guy himself. And whenever I was doing a high fall, he was always my point guy. He would bring out the airbag, he would set it up, he would be my kind of spotter. And there was a time I was working on a show, he was working with me, and I asked him if he wanted to come back the next day. I had more work for him, and he said, "No, I'm going to bring an airbag out for Uncle Cole," which is who he called a stunt guy he worked with as well, Cole McKay. Somebody was going to do a 50-foot fall down at the DWP water towers out near on the way to Magic Mountain. I don't remember what the name of the area is, but there's a huge DWP site out there. And about 2 in the morning, I think, I get a phone call from, we had answering services, Teddy's, Joni's, the stunt service. You'd have a little pager instead of a cell phone, and it would page you, and you'd try to find a payphone nearby and get to the call as quickly as possible. But I got the call from um, Joni's, and she kind of mumbled something that I couldn't quite make out, and she was in tears. And I said, "What?" And she finally said, "Paul Dallas missed the airbag. He's in the hospital." I went, "Whoa, how is he?" And then my wife called, and she said she had called the hospital because she was notified because they were trying to reach me, and that it didn't look good. They were trying to keep Paul alive until someone could find his parents and notify his parents. And with a lot of back and forth, we found someone that knew his parents and got in touch with them. And Paul, 4 or 5 in the morning, passed away. So I took that kind of personally because he wasn't supposed to do the high fall, but he did. He hit the edge of the bag and he went to the ground and hit his head on a one of those big rail ties which they had around the area, and it was pretty bad. It severed his skull from his spine, and he was just on life support until, I mean, it was pretty much severe injury. So I took it personally and said, "This is ridiculous," because the year before, Sonia Davis was working on Vampire in Brooklyn. She hit the edge of the bag, bounced off, and hit the back of her head into a wall. And 5 days later, she passed away from severe brain trauma. And there were other people that had also hit bags or missed bags and so forth in an awkward way that caused real bad injury or death. A good friend of mine became quadriplegic because she landed in the airbag wrong. And I said, there's something wrong that a bag that's filled with air that's supposed to be kind of pliable and movable and so forth is either spitting the people out or causing severe injury on impact if you're not center punching that bag. So I spent thousands of dollars. I had purchased with a partner most of Paul's equipment, his airbags and everything else, so long as our deal was we weren't going to use the name of his company, which was Calculated Risk. So I had come up with precision stunt safety specialists, being precise, safe with stunts, and to be specialist in it. So it kind of stuck. And then I started designing and figuring out more about airbags. So I changed the overall way the bag was set up and done. A standard airbag, the fan goes on the top of the bag and the bottom is just one big bumpy bag, and the top, but the air pushes forward, and they have what's called baffles, and the baffles would go from right to left, and as you hit the bag, the baffles would start to sag like a hammock, and then the bag would do like this. So if you hit here, it would collapse. If you hit here, it could roll over. So you have to center punch it so it would kind of roll in. And not everybody would center punch it. So I redesigned it so that the baffles went straight across and the bag would be flat. I had the airflow from the bottom part go up. So then it's like a finger system that when you hit, as soon as you hit, the air would kind of roll the bag in on you. So initial trial and error and so forth, I had come up with this concept that if you hit the bag off center, the bag rolls you in instead of letting you roll out or spit off. And the only way to really get hurt is you literally have to have a large portion of your body mass hit the edge of the bag. Miss the bag basically is the only way. And there's about 48 people alive today that have hit my bag wrong, but if it were standard bag, probably wouldn't be here anymore. Uh, Down the road, a lot of work and so forth, and getting notoriety for the bag. I submitted to the Academy of Motion Picture Academy Arts and Science, the Oscars, and I was a contender for the Scientific Technical Achievement, which is the award they. It used to be when they were doing the Oscars, they say last night at the Beverly Hilton we gave out. Now it's kind of like its own little thing that I guess they shoot it on YouTube now or something, and they don't really talk about it anymore because it's usually presented after the Oscars. But it's kind of cool to have your name listed on the Oscars. But long story short, after demonstrations and everything else, I was awarded the Scientific Technical Achievement Oscar, and lo and behold. So that's kind of a best way to explain that. Long way around.
Thanks. And so you've mentioned that as soon as Spider-Man puts on a suit, it's CGI. That was in the previous interview. And so now that Disney has stunt robots flipping through the air and dressed as a superhero, what do you see happening as the industry progresses?
Well, artificial intelligence is definitely expanding and getting better. I mean, people are looking at things on shows where guys are going into TV shows and stuff, and it looks very real. And I forget the name of the girl that agencies wanted to represent that was nothing but an AI person. The robot is good for live shows. It's good for live shows because even then, I'm sure the robot gets damaged and they have to do repairs and they have to have more than one because flying across the rooftop, I saw it live. I designed an airbag for their Avengers stunt show. And so I was out there and I saw the actor goes out and does all the Spider-Man stuff, then runs off stage, and then you see the robot swing across and do these weird positions and land in um, a catcher. It's good for live shows. Movies, I explained this earlier that it's less expensive to basically do an animated CGI version. The coolest thing is if you got a character in a costume like a Spider-Man or Batman or Captain America, is most of the face and flesh tones and so forth are covered. So it doesn't have to be absolutely accurate. And Spider-Man's just a cool animated figure that why have a robot fly across when you can have the character swing, stick to a wall, bounce off the wall, go to another wall, put it all in, and then put it on movies compared to having extremely expensive robotic system that the robot breaks down. CGI, you just make a little click and fix it.
Cool. And so you're really well known for the choreography of the Wolverine versus Sabretooth fight in X-Men. But there was another one with Mystique where you brought in a contortionist. And
I didn't actually, and I wanted to.
okay,
There got to be a lot of politics. The nice thing is I have a comic book background, and I knew the character Wolverine. I knew the X-Men. I was excited about the movie. Um, when we came in, there was a lot of politics that the producers didn't want the person Brian wanted as a stunt coordinator. With my background, I was setting up a lot of the action and everything else. They were looking for Wolverine for the longest time. The actor Dougray Scott, who was supposed to play him, injured his back slightly on whatever the Mission Impossible was at the time. So they started the search again, and I had a downtime because there's no one to choreograph, no one to teach the fight to. So I went off and did another job in Amsterdam for a week, and then when I came back, they had hired Hugh Jackman. So me being the double wasn't going to happen anymore. Hugh was, 6'3", and I was 5'10". So we were then looking for another double. But I had choreographed the entire statue head fight. And I trained Hugh. And I also gave him comic books, even though Brian Singer told him, I don't want you reading comics. But the whole basis of the character was on the comic. So you've got to kind of get to a sense. And I would give him character hints. I said, one of the problems is, you know, Wolverine, Logan has a short man complex, which is a little hard for you. And when he fights these bigger guys, one of the things he does, he tries to cut them down to size. And when he gets really over the top, it's called the berserker rage, and he's just almost unstoppable. So I explained these little nuances and tried to incorporate that in the fight. In the meanwhile, I was also wanting to work on the Mystique Wolverine fight. And my concept, um, whatever reasons, the studio heads, producers were uncertain. They weren't happy with stuff Brian was doing. So they brought in a second unit director, two of them. They brought in Corey Ewan, who is a big Hong Kong fight guy, and his team. Um, one of which was the actor that played Short Round that just won the Oscar for uh, every I forget the name of the movie, big title. Um, and a really good guy. And he was on their team. He also translated because he spoke both Cantonese and English. And they were brought out to do the Wolverine Mystique fight, and Conrad, who was the second unit director, was coming out to work on the Statue of Liberty head fight, and he did a lot of changes originally. Um, I'll get back to the Mystique one. I was walking down the hallway at the office in Toronto, and he called me in the office. Says, "Hey, I got this letter from Fox. They said, hey, Connie, nice to have you aboard, but we're really concerned on the fight. It's starting to look like WWE wrestling." He said, they talking about your fight or mine? Well, you're pile driving people and you got them being, straight armed and doing that. And I'm looking at it and I go, I don't know. Yes, I did. It was what you did. You changed the fight and it was no longer a comic book style fight. At a certain point, they went back to some of the stuff I did. I had some really cool stuff that was practical. When he was swinging around the spire on the Statue of Liberty head, I was able to do that practically. The stunt guy they brought in couldn't, so it became a CGI Wolverine, and it looks kind of cartoonish. That being said, I was put to work on the Mystique fight, and Corey is very talented, but a lot of the stuff he does, he takes from movies he did before, and he just repurposes them for the new movie. So the Wolverine Mystique fight he was doing was something that had previously been done. And I wasn't happy with that. I wanted the idea of getting a contortionist. And she kept bobbing and weaving and flipping over backwards and doing stuff that looked almost physically impossible. And she kept morphing into things. Like he'd hit her and she hit the wall and suddenly she disappeared because she'd morph into like looking like the wall, or some of the statues or stuff that were in the museum that was around the bottom of the Statue of Liberty thing. And there was one point that during the fight, Wolverine swings at her, and I have her duck, go under her legs, grab him by the ankles, and flip him. and he keeps getting beaten by her. And there's a point I had in the fight where he closes his eyes and he sniffs her out, and then he's able to get her with the claws because that's right out of the comic. They kept having Wolverine fight and run away. And I said, well, why is she running away? Why is he running away? And Corey goes, Wolverine going to save Rogue. And I'm like, no, he finishes business, then he moves on. But wouldn't listen to me. So I went to Tom and I said, Tom, they keep having Wolverine running away from the fight. And I explained, and Tom said, no. So Tom went to them and said, no, he finishes and then he goes on with business. Um, but the fight they did, I'm very unhappy with a lot of the stuff that ended up. I'm very happy with the way Hugh moved. I thought it was a spectacular. He was great. Um, I got behind the scenes video the last time I went to San Diego Con. I was there with Tom DeSanto, um, who, if not for Tom, X-Men never would have been made. And if not for X-Men, we wouldn't have an MCU to this day. So Tom's kind of, in an offbeat way, responsible for the MCU. Um, that being said, he showed me some behind the scenes footage, which I got, and then I had put it on my Instagram and on Facebook that shows the behind the scenes. Also, during the shoot, um, things were miserable. A lot of people weren't getting along. It was very difficult. And at one point, I got together with Tom, and I had one of the official Spider-Man suits from Marvel with me because I had just done a Marvel appearance for them. And Tom has set up the place for me to come out. There was a scene where the X-Men go to the Statue of Liberty and Cyclops blast the door, but before that they all stop at the door. So I run out behind them as Spider-Man and go, "Oh, I am so sorry, I'm completely in the wrong movie." And that's like this huge big thing that people like. I'm famous for that and famous for being on a comic book cover. But so it's kind of part of um, X-Men lore, X-Men history from the movie. That was the first unofficial appearance of Spider-Man in a Marvel movie. So, but my X-Men, my Wolverine Mystique fight had a whole different aspect to it. It was more comic book oriented compared to Hong Kong Kung Fu. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the way you described some of the direction was very, very, I guess I found it kind of comedic with the impersonation. So
Yeah, yeah, well, I do that.
thanks. All right. And so you worked with Michelle on a number of military movies. It's the and so in one of them there's this scene where he's rescuing a woman who is kidnapped and he's encircled by a bunch of people in the bar and he's kicking them around. Um, can you talk a little bit about, those scenes that you helped choreograph?
Are you talking Olivier Gruner?
Olivia Gruner. Oh my
No, no,
God.
that's okay.
Yes.
That's okay.
Um,
Olivier is an interesting person. On when you work with him on movies, he can be very difficult. He's very action oriented. He has a fan base. Um, I was introduced to him. They had a stunt coordinator they worked with before in a movie called Doppelganger, the producer did, and they just didn't get along. For whatever reason, the producer director, who I greatly admire, is a good friend of mine. His daughter, who was born near the same time as my daughter, they're very close friends. Um, I interviewed, and they said, "Well, we need you to go meet with Olivier, and if Olivier likes you." So I went out and I trained with Olivier, and I taught him stuff on the trampoline. Um, and I was showing him moves about jumping and diving and how the character in Savage would originally move. And he got all excited by that. At some point, I still have it. I had this checkbook. Let me see that. And he saw that. He goes, "Oh, you're like Spider-Man. Hey, that's where all these stuff is coming from, eh? Now these make sense." And I go, "Well, yeah, but a lot of it's original too." But he kind of thought these were kind of Spider-Man style moves, which he still liked and incorporated. So a lot of the fighting style and movements that Olivier did, I helped develop. Um, and he was very hands-on about certain things, which made my job difficult, but I also understood where he was coming from. And then I was off in Ireland shooting a movie called Space Truckers. and they were gearing up to do another movie with Olivier and John Ritter called Mercenary, and I wanted to do Mercenary. And the unit production manager, Simon, nice guy, had his own guy he liked. And this guy was good at paragliding, which was the parachute paragliding. And anyways, he was this guy, and there was a lot of problems. The action wasn't going well. It wasn't looking good. Um, but I was promised the movie. So when I got back from Ireland, I went to the office, and they'd already been shooting a lot of stuff in San Diego. And the stunt budget was way over budget. They'd already used their budget plus some, so they were low on money. And I went in to talk to Avi, and I go, Scott, how are you, my man? And I go, I'm okay, not so good. And we talk, and he goes, Boy, I'm glad you're here. I should have hired you originally. This guy is ridiculous. And he starts to put down the other guy that's working with the stunt coordinator. Says, the action doesn't look good. He's not this, he's not that. And I looked at him and said, Well, if you're not happy with him, fire him and bring me in. He says, I might just do that. They did this huge action sequence with air rams and people being thrown through the air in San Diego, and they kept him on. And I don't remember what happened, but they were really unhappy with certain things. The budget went way over again. The action wasn't that great for what he was looking for. He was very unhappy. And so I get a phone call to come out to San Diego that I'm taking over the movie. I go over and I have a really limited budget because most of the budget's been used. So I figure out what I can do, work with certain things. And the first thing I do is Olivier's character is supposed to go into this bar to rescue this kidnapped girl. And I come up with this fight sequence using his skills to the best of my abilities that when he comes in, he basically kicks ass in the bar where he's knocking people into things, doing things. Once in a while, he changed something. He says, "Oh, my character wouldn't do this. What he would do is this." And I go, "Okay, well, let's do that." But I brought in some Hong Kong style people that would hit the ground hard. So not doing Hong Kong moves, but hitting the table and bam, going to the floor hard or smashed into things hard. And there was a good group of people I brought in and put a really good fight together. It looked really good. And Avi, the director producer, that was a friend of mine, came up and said, I got to tell you what you did. This is the best fight I've ever seen Olivia do. This is fantastic. Went great. Movie comes out, says fight choreography Olivier Gruner. I said, okay, well, what do you do? But it was a good fight. I like Olivier. Um, Action's very important to him, to where he can kind of be a real hardhead about it. And so a lot of people that worked with him go to him, oh my God, he's so impossible to work with. You got to kind of step back. Yes, he's hard to work with. And yes, sometimes he can take what you do as your job and make it very difficult. But he's also concerned about what he looks like and how he's doing it. So, anyways, that's kind of my thing working with Olivier. I did Savage, I did Mars, I did Mercenary 1 and 2 with Olivier. And those are the last films. But I would get calls from other people say, yeah, I'm doing this movie. You used to work with Olivier. I said, yeah. He said, oh my God. And he said, what do you, I said, just give him space. Don't get in his way. But
All right, and so I wanted to talk about the Postal movie quickly. And this is not the most major credit you've ever had. You got All-Star Weekend, X-Men, so on and so forth. And Postal is a very, very, very low budget film in comparison. But
mhm.
I used to play it back in high school. And fun fact about the Postal series, Postal 2 specifically, is it was made illegal in 26 different countries because the game was so over the top. It was a hell of a lot of fun to play. And so, if you don't mind, could you discuss some of the stunts in Postal and then maybe something about the cat silencer?
I don't remember much on the Cat Silencer, to be honest with you. We did a whole big scene in some big area where buildings were blown up and windows, and we had people falling off roofs, and I get grabbed in the crotch by him, and I do this high pitched squeal, and there was just for a good week there was a whole bunch of stuff. I did driving on it, I did fights on it. Ed Anders, really good friend of mine, is a stunt coordinator. Nicest guy you've ever met. You wouldn't think he's a stunt man with his attitude. He was remarkable. But I, I hate to say, it was just a job. It was kind of a silly, fun job that um, I can't really remember a lot about it. Um, we would be someplace and Ed would say, we would talk about, well, we can do this. And Ed would say, okay, well, let him do that. And I said, oh, and I could ratchet somebody through a window. And I said, okay. And I would set up with the people and do a ratchet, and a guy would get ratcheted through a window. And um, don't remember whose son. It might have been Ed's son that he gave him his first stunt, did a ratchet on the movie. He was good. But I mean, it was just a lot of fun mayhem, basically. But things I can't really recall much about the cat silencer. I apologize on that.
It's fine. It's all right. And so, are you able to discuss All-Star Weekend? That's one of your most recent
Um,
projects.
it was interesting. Um, Jamie Foxx, the stunt guy, Julius LaFleur was the stunt coordinator, and the double, Clay Fontenay, was really close with, but Clay kept giving the orders, do this and do that. I just basically did rigging on it, air ram stuff, wire stuff. Um, for a while, it was sitting there for a while. I didn't know if it was ever going to get finished. So I don't know much about the movie except I worked a couple of weeks on it doing some safety work more than anything else, and then wire and setting up specific stunts. And I don't know, has it ever been released?
I don't know. I mean,
I don't know
I
either.
just screened this on IMDb.
Yeah, no, I mean, so
Um,
it's for the longest time I saw post-production, post-production. I didn't know what it was at that point.
all right. And so Gwen Stefani, you did a music video for Gwen Stefani.
Hmm.
This I would love to hear about that.
Didn't know who Gwen Stefani was. I did a lot of music videos. Again, it was a lot of rigging on my part, pirates jumping through the air and doing things. Um, there was a funny thing going on. Um, this guy might have dated her. I don't remember. She requested a Cirque performer, and his name was Jesus, not Jesus, Jesus. And he came to the set because she requested, because he did some really cool Cirque du Soleil stuff. And I worked with Cirque at the time because my airbags, I was designing and building airbags. And Cirque has a specific rule about people doing offset work because they can get hurt. And I'm real good friends with the main creators and the guys that are behind Cirque in Vegas. This guy comes out with his attitude. He goes, "Hey, I want a trampoline here, and I want this over here, and this there." And my stunt coordinator, Julius, again, looks at me and goes, "What the hell is it? Who is this guy?" I said, "I don't know." He says, "He's a Cirque guy." He says, "He's taking over the whole set, doing things that aren't in the budget, adding this, wanting that, so forth and so on." I said, "You want me to make a phone call?" He goes, "Yeah." So I call Jacques Paquin, French Canadian. "Hey, Jacques, Scott here. I got a guy from Cirque's got an attitude. He's taking over the set. He's kind of telling everybody what to do." And he goes, "Wait a second, let me guess. Is his name Jesus?" I said, "Yes." "Oh, yeah, he's a son of a bitch. Very talented, but he's a son of a bitch. Don't let him get away with it. Tell him Jacques knows he's there and see what he does." So I go over and we're talking about this stuff and say, "Okay, we're going to get you a trampoline. By the way, Jacques Paquin says hello." His face goes white. Now he starts to treat me with a little respect because I just talked to his boss and he could lose his position at Surf. I mean, it's in the video. We've got these pirates on the ship. I've got guys being lifted up. This guy's doing trampoline work and all this other stuff while she does, the video. Um, it was fun. Again, she did a spectacular job. We had these wires that we were pulling her, and she got a little bit of chafing with it. And I think I talked Julius into giving her a stuntman hat. And I made some joke. I said, she's really gone beyond, above and beyond on this. I mean, it's incredible. Make sure that nobody hear pirates or music. And she kind of laughed and so forth. But I was not a big music person. I mean, this was before she became anybody. big. I mean, she was doing videos and she was out there, but sadly, I really didn't know much about her at the time. So,
All right. Fun fact, so yeah, Gwen Stefani actually she dated the lead singer of Real Big Fish like back in the this is the early 90s.
yeah,
Yeah. I love ska music, and so
Jesus was dating Pam Anderson. She showed up on the set and she was a friend of Gwen's. That's who he dated. It wasn't Gwen. He was dating Pamela Anderson for a very short amount of time. So go back to your fun fact because you just reminded me. She was dating the lead singer.
I Jesus was the lead singer of
No, Jesus wasn't.
oh
Jesus
excuse me.
was the Cirque performer. And I thought they were dating when I was telling you the story, but then I realized he was dating Pamela Anderson at the time.
Okay.
So she was not dating. It was not Gwen that was dating him because I said that earlier, I think, but that was wrong. Jesus was dating Pamela Anderson. So Gwen Stefani was dating the lead singer, is what you were saying. That had nothing to do with Jesus.
Oh no, nothing at all. And this Real Big Fish is a different band, but um like both No Doubt and Real Big Fish are two of the most well-known ska bands in Southern California and probably the world at this point. Um, okay. And so you've talked a lot about wire work, and then this was 20 years ago, and then you were nominated for a Taurus World Stunt Award for the fall in X versus Sever, and then
Hmm.
that was using wires.
Yes.
So what did you experience? What did you learn during that fall and the rigging that carried on through any of the other movies we mentioned?
Well, originally, as I stated, I was close friends with Dar Robinson for a while, and Dar had come up with a couple of innovative wire falls. He had redesigned the descender, and he came up with something called the decelerator. And the decelerator is like this reverse ratchet that pulls in with a pulley system that as a person falls and the ratchet does a counter, it slows you down. So he was working on a movie called, I think it was Sharkies. He played an albino. Maybe it wasn't Sharkies. I don't remember what it was. But he and Bert were really good friends, and this was the first place he was going to do it, where he gets he's the main bad guy, kills a lot of people in the movie, and he and Bert have this final connection, and he's hanging off a rail of a building way the hell up there, and he Bert says something about whether whatever the line is, and he's not going to help him or something, and he pushes off and he fires the gun, and you just watch him as he goes. There's people walking below. There's no airbag, and it was the coolest thing. It's never been done. Ballistic X versus Sever, I'm on a descender system that I'm supposed to fall, and there's a camera that follows me all the way down. There's a camera rig. And it was as close to doing that same stunt because I'm hitting the roof of a car, even though the roof was set up specifically to take an impact compared to just the regular roof of a car. Um, it was the closest I had done to doing a similar stunt to what Dar had done. Um, God, that bothers me. It wasn't Sharky's. He worked on Sharky's machine. He went out the window backwards, and it was a large fall. It was 150 feet. Um, Stick was the name of the movie in 1985. Before that, he had done Sharky's Machine way back in 1981, where he went out the window, um, doubling the bad guy. But in Stick, he played this albino, and it was him. So it was not Sharky's Machine, was Stick. That was bothering me. I wanted to make sure I got that right. But yeah, Ballistic, yes, I've got a lot of credits. I can't remember everything, but I had not worked on that movie. And there is a Gary Benz who did a documentary and used to work with Dar a lot on That's Incredible and some other shows. Loved Dar, and he put out a documentary TV show that gives all that behind the scenes stuff, and He was innovative. He was incredible, and I learned a lot from him. I learned there's a science and there's a way to keep it safe but make it look spectacular. So
Right. And so you mentioned something interesting. This was something went wrong during a fire stunt, and apparently it was the stunt coordinator who was
I was the stunt
looking.
coordinator.
Oh, so someone was the director was like arguing on the phone with his wife, and
Oh, no, no,
camera
that wasn't
assist
the
was
fire
running.
stunt that went wrong. That's where I got this scar. Um, Parker Stevenson was married to Kirstie Alley, and that was a separate movie. I forget. Oh, it was called Legion. Rick Springsteen was in that as well, and Parker Stevenson and Terry Farrell. Um, but in between shots, Parker would be on the phone. I mean, cussing her out. They were in the middle of a divorce, and it got really bad. And there's this thing called the Irish whip, where you grab the guy's arm, you swing it, and he does the flip. And we rehearsed it, and he was great. But in between the setup, he had gone off and was yelling at her on the phone. Came back, and when he did the flip, he forgot to let go of my arm, and it took me right to my head, and my teeth went through my chin here. And so then I went out and got stitched up and came back and finished the show. And but the fire stunt was a separate. That was an Olivia Gruder film, and that was called Mars. And that was I was a stunt coordinator on both of them. That was fire guys got so immersed in what I was doing with the fire stunt, they literally forgot to put me out. So
So an extra few seconds, but it cooked you through a little bit. Yeah.
the story is that I had rehearsed it. What I was going to do is go off the trampoline, hit a table that had kerosene on it. The table might slide. If it slides to the left, I've got a fire crew there, and this fire crew comes in as well. If it goes straight, I got fire guys there. So I had fire extinguishers surrounding the whole area. Here, 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 here. So like 6 guys, all with fire extinguishers. So we rehearse it, and I go, and it goes here, and it goes there. So we set it up, pour the kerosene on the table. The guy that's going to light me says, "So after you hit the trampoline, I count to 3." I said, "No, the second you light me. 1, 2, 3. I'm on the table. Put me out. It's going to be a hot burn." And I've got fire gel on, but you have to see my face, so I'm not wearing a fire mask. On the take, lights me. I hit the trampoline. 1,001, 1,002. I'm on the table. The table's sliding across. The fire on the kerosene's coming up. 1,004, 1,005, 1,006. I finally yell, "Put me the fuck out." Everybody rushes in. Face has first and second degree burns on it. I go in, I get some stuff on it, I come back. But they would just literally, everybody just stood by and watched the burn, go, "Oh my God, this is so cool," and forgot to put me out.
All right. And you mentioned that if so you can't trust someone professionally if they're not faithful to their wife. And someone
No,
this
that's
is the
my own
person that died.
philosophy. So say that again. I'm sorry.
Oh, so this movie with the fire, that's also the one where your friend passed away.
He was working on it, and then he left to go work on the TV show, which is what he died on, the TV show. I wish he was there that night that I got burned.
Okay.
And that night, when I had come back, I said, "Hey, can you want to come back tomorrow?" And he goes, "Oh, I can't." But that was the same movie, yeah.
Okay.
My philosophy that you're talking about is growing up and moving around a lot. I've had girlfriends, and I wasn't always faithful to the girlfriends, and I'm not making excuses for that. But I always had this philosophy that if you get married and you make that solemn vow to love and to hold, blah, 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 that if you're unfaithful to your wife and you made an basically sacred vow, I tend not to trust you because if you're going to screw them over, what's going to keep you from screwing me over? Most of the people that have kind of done me wrong have, a lot of infidelity and, could care less. They're married, they got kids, but they're messing around all the time. And I tend not to have full trust in them. That's just me. That's my philosophy.
Just
Yeah.
just you and 90, 95, 99% of people.
I wrote a book.
Oh,
Don't even worry
I'm
about
the
it.
Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
the book basically, a lot of the stories we just told were written and put in the book. Um, I'll just show the cover. Hold on. I wrote this book. It is published. It's in bookstores, but a lot of the stories about my relationship with Spider-Man and Marvel Comics, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, John Romita, my working in movies with Clint Eastwood and Francis Ford Coppola and Steven Spielberg. Um, the stories are in there. The thing about the fire stunts in there, some real fun, interesting stories with Clint Eastwood are in there. It's got really good reviews, by the way, not from friends, but from actual people that review books. Um, it's an interesting take on Hollywood from a different point of view. It's not just about a stuntman. It's kind of my whole life that centers around how I became a stuntman and what I've been doing from second unit directing. But a lot of it segues into my relationship with Marvel, and that's how kind of everything started way back, which tells you where and how I first met them and how I first wore the costume and what that felt like. Got a history with Marvel. I'm famous for being on the cover of Spider-Man. Hold on, getting up again. Ah, this is special edition. I'm going to get the original. Okay, so this came out in 1985. It's The Amazing Spider-Man, number 262. And out of everything I've done, I'm famous for being on this cover. I've worked with Clint Eastwood. I've won an Oscar. I've won an Emmy. I've won engineering awards. I've worked on some of the biggest movies around, and that's what I'm most famous for. That's what most people know me for. But it's cool because I'm a part of Marvel history. They reissued the comic last year because they were doing this whole symbiote thing, and that was part of the thing. But long story short, it's a part of history, and it's in the book about how it happened and behind the scenes. A lot of cool behind the scenes photos that haven't been shown elsewhere. We talk about X-Men. We talk about pretty much a lot of stuff we talked about here. So that's kind of everything there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again for doing this. And I did not intentionally dress like Venom today, but I'm glad that it worked out well with the showing of the Spider-Man comic.
Yeah, no, no. I'm glad I signed this for somebody, and they get to me and the guy this is Elliot Brown who did the photo on the cover. He's holding a tape dispenser, and this was originally a comic that was done as a backup in case the comic that was supposed to be didn't come out, and they didn't. So the artist had done written and drawn this one, and they decided, hey, wouldn't this be cool to do a photo cover? And the artist actually did another cover in case this didn't work out. But famously or infamously, however you want to put it, it worked out and it's become a part of Marvel comic lore. So, but if you want to know more, buy the book.
I bought a copy. It's good. So
There you
trust me
go.
on
I
that.
appreciate it. Cool.
Awesome.
Always.
Thank
It's a
you.
pleasure.